Good morning, Canada. Welcome back to another episode of Question Period. Today's November 5th. Wow, today's the day, folks. Today is the day where history is being made. One way or another, no matter who wins the American election, there's going to be lots of protests. There's going to be riots, and I mean, depending on how crazy things get, potentially even some form of micro or macro civil war in America. I laugh because if I didn't, I would be crying at just how polarized our world is. Anyways, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another stream. Today's question period is going to be incredible. Canadian politicians are at the edge of their seats. Liberals are just like biting their nails going, oh my God, say it ain't so. No way Trump's going to win. No, what are we going to do? Well, I'll tell you what you're going to do, liberals. You're not going to be in power for much longer, so it don't really matter. Now, I posted a interview yesterday on my extra channel about Pierre Poilievre being asked on who he wants to win the American election. And he didn't answer it. I'm not happy that he didn't answer it, but his non-answer, just the way he kind of beat around the bush, made me feel like he would rather Trump be president than Kamala Harris. And let's be honest, I think we all would. A couple things about this. I'm actually losing subscribers because on all of my channels because I have come out and said that I want Trump to win. I can't believe it. I got the proof right here. I posted this on my X account. I'm losing subscribers because I want Trump to win the American election. As you can see, this is my extra channel. Somebody said, you lost me as a subscriber for being a Trump guy. And I said, I'm devastated. So to those that were waiting for me to start this stream, and I know I was a few minutes late, I was just crying about this. That's why my voice is shot. I was crying. I've got a bunch of tissues around me. I'm really, really devastated by this. And despite one of the funny comments saying Sunshine was busy putting pants on. Nope, I was not busy putting pants on because we all know, am I wearing pants? Am I not wearing pants? I'm not wearing pants. I got booty shorts on again. I'm not wearing pants. So Sunshine was not busy putting pants on. I keep putting my foot up like a burlesque freaking show or something. I should stop doing that, but I don't care. I'm sick. So I get to do what I want. I identify as it being okay. A couple of things here. I did mention yesterday that there was a code that you could use. Now, this was for members only, channel members only, but you know what? We're all family here on the stream. And so I'm gonna drop the code again right now. I'm gonna tell you the code again. All right, you ready? I think it's for 15% off. My guy's watching. Maybe he can confirm it's for 15% off. I don't know if it's more than that. But if you use code Sunshine, I believe it's all caps, and you click the link to the merch website. I think the sticker pack is linked at the top of the description or the pinned comment on the live stream, and the top of the description of the live stream. You get these sticker packs for 15% off, folks. 15% off. Look at that. Keep calm, never vote liberal. Trudeau must go. Only scams. Freeland on a broom. Stop the WEF. Use code Sunshine to get yourself 15% off. And I'll have your attention. You know, we got to talk about the petition still. Look, I don't ask for your attention too much. I don't ask for you to click off the videos too much. All right. I want you to stay here. I want us to focus on what the heck's going on with my guy confirmed it is 15% off. Beauty. Wow, fantastic. All right. And then we got the petition here. For those that haven't yet signed it, make sure you annoy your friends and family to sign this. All right. Stopmutingthemic.ca. Stopmutingthemic.ca. Look how detailed this website is, folks. A lot of work went into this petition. A lot of work went into this website here. We're trying to make a difference. And since the petition came live, I don't think we've seen Greg Fergus mute the mic once. So that's a phenomenal start. We're at 10,500 signatures. We kind of hit a bit of a roadblock here. Kind of hit a bit of a standstill. I'm not going to lie. We had a lot of momentum. the biggest, the most, right? A tremendous amount of momentum right when we started, but it's kind of slowed down a little bit. I'll be honest. A lot of that's my fault. I haven't been promoting it as much. I want people to be able to get their stickers in time for Christmas with that 15% off code. Remember what it is? Sunshine. Sunshine for the stickers only, for the sticker packs only, I believe. But yeah, you can try it on anything. It'll either work or it won't work. But on the sticker pack, it'll absolutely work. So we got one heck of a show lined up for you folks today. Justin Trudeau is scheduled to be in Parliament. Chrystia Freeland came out with a video yesterday saying, look, Canada, it's okay. Whoever wins the election, just know that it's a fair election and that, we trust America to make the right decision. And even Karina Gould this morning came out and said, I don't know if I want to talk too much about the American election, but, they're going to do what's right. Everyone's paying attention. Everyone's paying attention to what's going on. I don't know. I've been on the fence about whether I'm going to stream, the American election. But I don't know if I will, because my voice is pretty shot. But let's get into what's going on in the House. All right. They're in the House right now. They're doing their privilege statements. They're going to be getting into statements by members. So here we go, folks. And for those that haven't yet already, take the time right now to smash that like button. Why don't you? We got like 266 likes on the stream. We got over 1,200 people watching. Let's get the numbers up. Let's get the numbers up. Hit that like button. It's free. Every like on the stream is Trudeau crying in his bathtub. He doesn't have meetings there. We know that, but he cries there. He cries there. That's for sure. Here we go. Let's take a look at what they're saying.
The issue and the question I have for the member opposite, does he not agree that the Conservative leader needs to start putting the Canadian interests ahead of his own personal interests and the interests of the Conservative Party, and let's allow the Conservative motion to actually be voted on?
The honourable member for Edmonton Millwoods.
Well, one thing I will agree on with this member, Mr. Speaker, that this is a very, very expensive, call it a scandal. Mr. Speaker, what happened here, the Canadians know that over $400 million of hard-earned Canadian taxpayer dollars were funneled through a Liberal-appointed chair to Liberal-connected companies, and they lined their own pockets with it, Mr. Speaker. Canadians deserve answers. Canadians deserve justice in this case. Mr. Speaker, this Parliament, through you, decided that those documents should be presented to the RCMP. We, as an opposition, are here to make sure that that happens.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The current situation is so serious that listening to the cacophony of the debate, it's almost laughable. Ha ha. Well, listen, it's absurd. It's Kafkaesque, if you will. Public interest has been completely evacuated from this debate. Debates that should be held. We have enough proof to show the gravity of the situation. But the opposition is putting conditions on things. These conditions that they be submitted to the RCMP, it cannot be done. The RCMP itself admits that it doesn't want the documents because they will compromise its investigation. This is a paradox. It's based on the weakness of human spirit. I will ask my colleague, will he back down and stop repeating empty slogans and get down to work?
Mr. Speaker, we will not back down from protecting Canadians and Canadians' best interest. $400 million were funneled to Liberal insiders. They stole that money, Mr. Speaker. Canadians deserve to get it back. Canadians deserve to know what happened, and the RCMP should get all of those documents so they can bring criminal charges on all the people that are involved in this case.
And comments, the honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We, of course, support the motion. We want to get to the bottom of things. And NDP MPs were key in terms of getting to the bottom of the SNC Lavaland scandal and in terms of the We Charity. as well. But, Mr. Speaker, my colleague said, gosh, that we need to get answers for Canadians. And he also talked about what is a considerable amount of money, $400 million tied up with the STTDC scandal. What he didn't mention was that the Conservative scandals under the Harper regime were even bigger. I'm talking about the $400 million for the ETS scandal, $1 billion for the G8 scandal. We remember the misspending that took place at that time. The Phoenix Pay scandal was $2.2 billion. The anti-terrorism funding, they simply lost the paper trail, it was $3.1 billion. So the Conservatives were much worse in terms of the massive amounts of corruption and misspending under the Harper regime. The Conservatives misspent a lot more. And so we've never had an apology from a single Conservative member. No one has acknowledged the fact that they shut down all the parliamentary inquiries into these spending scandals. And my question is simply this to my colleague. If $400 million is bad, why is the $5.2 billion that Conservatives misspent not so much worse?
The honourable member for Edmonton Millwoods.
Well, Mr. Speaker, right on cue. There's the NDP standing up to protect their Liberal buddies. And this is what we've seen all along right here in Parliament. They will continue to stand up for this Prime Minister. The NDP Liberal government are doing nothing but protecting themselves. Mr. Speaker, we are here for accountability, for transparency. The House of Commons has voted for these documents to be turned over to the RCMP, and we will make sure that happens.
Comments? The honourable member for Regina Luna.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'll leave the NDP comments where they stand. Thank you for that answer to my friend from Edmonton Mills. My question is, they talk about some of the scandals, but one thing I find fascinating is the fact that this Prime Minister is the first Prime Minister that has ever been in conflict of interest, not once, not twice. And how many cabinet ministers have also been found in conflict of interest? So I'd like my friend to answer the question of, do we know how many Liberal cabinet ministers and how many times the Prime Minister has violated the Conflict of Interest Act, Mr. Speaker?
The honourable member for Edmonton Millwoods.
Good question, and I think this is part of their strategy, that they continue to have so many scandals and so many conflict of interest violations that I think they're just hoping Canadians forget about it. But we will not forget.
No, we're not forgetting about that. I'll tell you that for free.
Sure that they are held accountable for their actions, held accountable for every single scandal that they've had, especially this one. This is $400 million of Canadians' hard-earned taxpayer money. We're going to get it back for them.
Question commentaire.
Bringing hope, so.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I believe this member is number 98 in terms of the number of Conservatives that actually spoke on the Conservative filibuster, and there's still a lot more to come. There's no doubt about that. I want to take the member to an issue that is very serious here in Canada today and to get his comment. The issue of foreign interference is very real. It's very much something that Canadians are concerned about.
Yeah, traitors sit next to you, bro.
Decision not to get the security clearance. And that begs the question as to why it is he continues to not get the interest, or continues to, why it is that the leader of the Conservative Party continues to not get the security clearance. Many, including myself, believe that he actually has something to hide, that there's something that he should be telling Canadians, but he's choosing not to do that, and that's the reason why he's made the decision not to get the security clearance. Unlike every other leader in the House of Commons, does he not agree that he should be putting his personal interest to the side and come clean and share with Canadians why it is that he actually does not feel he should have to get the security clearance? What is he hiding?
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Millwoods.
Mr. Speaker, this is the debate today, that what are they hiding? That really is the question, because they will go to any lengths to talk about anything except what we're debating today, which is $400 million of hard-earned taxpayer dollars being funneled to Liberal insiders, Mr. Speaker. The RCMP needs to look into the situation. The RCMP needs those documents. This House of Commons voted for those documents to be turned over to the RCMP. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to push for justice.
Another question. The
Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask a question to my honourable colleague. a question that I haven't had answers to so far.
Man, that'd be crazy if we get that money back.
Is the Conservative
I'm not holding my breath.
committed to continuing to finance green technologies and development, knowing that it's important to have a necessary, just transition?
Mr. Speaker, what we're committed to is ensuring that in this place there's accountability and transparency from this government, Mr. Speaker. They have now a whole range of scandals. It's hard to keep track of how many scandals there are, hard to keep track of all the conflict of interest breaches. Over 186 in just this one case. That's in addition to what the Prime Minister's already gone through and other ministers have gone through, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to hold this government to account, and that is why, Mr. Speaker, we need a carbon tax election to change this.
Resuming debate. Is the House ready for the question? The question is as follows. Monsieur Scheer, appuyé par Monsieur Bertal.
Mr. Scheer, seconded by Mr. Upel, says that the be sent to the Standing Committee on House Affairs, and
Mr. Perkins moves the following amendment, that the motion be amended by adding the following. Quote, provided that it be an instruction to the committee, A, that the following witnesses be ordered to appear before the committee separately for 2 hours each. 1, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry. 2, the Clerk of the Privy Council. 3, the Auditor General of Canada. And 4, the Commissioner of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. 5, the Deputy Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development. 6, the Law Clerk and Parliamentary Council of the House of Commons. 7, the Acting President of Sustainable Development Technology Canada. 8, a panel consisting of the Board of Sustainable Development Technology Canada. And B, that a report back to the House no later than Friday, November 22nd, 2024. Monsieur Muse, sous-amendement.
Mr. Muse, sub-amendment, moves the following after A1 with what follows. 3, the Commissioner of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, who must table unredacted documents for Paul McGennon, former Deputy Secretary.
Wishes the sub-amendment be carried or carried on division, or if a member of a recognized party participating in person wishes to request a recorded division. I invite them now to rise and indicate it to the chair. The honourable member for Regina Louvain.
We request a recorded vote, please.
Pursuant to Standing Order 45, the division stands deferred until later this day at the expiry of the time provided for oral questions, which means we go back and we're orders of the day.
What the hell is going on?
Jour, privilege. Resuming consideration on a motion on the failure of a witness to provide information to the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics.
And resuming debate. So on our list, I just want to confer with who's supposed to be next here.
I feel like they're having a little bit of miscommunication amongst themselves.
The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby is the next one on the list on the main motion. No? All right. Going to the next one on the list, we're going to go to the honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Thank you. Who's Randy? That is the central question before this House as a result of your ruling, Mr. Speaker, in finding a prima facie question of privilege after the Minister of Employment's business partner, Stephen Anderson, refused to disclose to the Ethics Committee who Randy is. The Ethics Committee's probe into Randy began when Global News reported that the Minister of Employment was involved in a shady PPE company called Global Health Imports with Stephen Anderson. According to Global News, the Minister had been a partner at Global Health Imports along with Stephen Anderson up until the time that he had been elected in 2021, and that he continued to maintain a 50% ownership stake with Anderson. Global News reported
Mr. Anderson.
that the company was mired in allegations of fraud and ripping off clients. Indeed, multiple judgments have been issued against the minister's company by Alberta courts. Alberta courts have ordered the minister's company to pay back clients $7.8 million for ripping them off. And Global Health Imports faces a litany of other lawsuits, including a lawsuit commenced by a California-based company, the Gowie Group. The Gowie Group, like other clients of the minister's company, purchased PPE. The PPE was never delivered, but the Gowie Group was on the hook for $500,000, having transferred a $500,000 deposit to the minister's company. Now, one of the excuses provided by Stephen Anderson for the failure to deliver PPE was the Global Health Imports warehouse burned down. Amazingly, 2 weeks after Global Health Imports received the $500,000. And then Anderson was reported to have told the Gowie Group that once they collected the insurance money, maybe then he would be in a position to repay the $500,000 deposit. And the Edmonton police, in their investigation of the fire, concluded that in all likelihood it was arson. Just by coincidence, Mr. Speaker. So here you have a minister involved in a shady company, mired in allegations of fraud, ordered by Alberta courts to pay back clients $7.8 million, where there are allegations or evidence of potential arson and insurance fraud. I would submit that on that alone, that ought to have been enough for the Prime Minister to tell the Minister of Employment, you're fired, you're out of cabinet. But there's more, because Global News reported that someone named Randy, connected with Global Health Imports, was involved in shaking down the Gowie Group for that $500,000 deposit, and that was evidenced in text messages. Among the text messages that Global News uncovered was a message from Stephen Anderson to the Gowie Group leading up to the Shakedown, in which he says, "What is going on? I just received this from Randy." And then he copied and pasted the message that he had received from Randy that states, "Anderson, it's 1314 MST and 1514 EST. It literally takes 10 seconds to complete a transfer. I'm telling you, we are not allocating like this. It's midday and nothing is completed. I'm calling Felix to discuss. Be available in 15 for a partner call." Now, why are these text messages so significant? Well, very simply, because if the minister is the Randy in those text messages, then the minister broke the law.
Yeah.
The Conflict of Interest Act is clear. A minister of the Crown shall not be involved in the operations of a business. If the minister is that Randy, then the minister was involved in the operations of the business, working to secure a $500,000 deposit for Global Health Imports, not to mention participating in a partners meeting. Now, that's why the Ethics Committee launched its investigation. We brought the minister to committee at the beginning of June.
But everything got
The minister
blocked.
was adamant he wasn't that Randy. How convenient, except for a few inconvenient facts for the minister. First of all, the Gowie Group believed at all times that the Minister of Employment was that Randy in the text messages. When Global News reached out to Anderson to inquire who the Randy in the text messages was, he said it was not the minister but the VP of Logistics. But when Global News inquired as to who the VP of Logistics was, they found out it was not a Randy but one Edward Anderson, the father of Stephen Anderson. And Anderson later admitted before the Ethics Committee that he lied to Global News. Global News undertook a further investigation. They couldn't find a trace of an upper Randy at Global Health Imports. And I would further add that the Randy referenced in the text messages was a partner. The minister had been a partner along with Anderson up until his election. He had a 50% stake in the company at the time of the text messages. And according to the minister's own evidence at committee, he admitted that it was a small operation, that there were a handful of people in the company, him, Anderson, and a few others. So in the face of that, without a trace of an upper Randy, without any explanation for who this other Randy could be, there is only one reasonable inference that can be drawn, and that is that the Minister of Employment is the Randy in the text messages. He is the Randy that was involved in the shakedown of the Gowie Group. He is involved in allegations of wire fraud, and he is the Randy who, as minister, contravened the Conflict of Interest Act. The minister's story doesn't add up. Everyone knows that he is bad Randy, and it is why Conservatives have been consistent in calling for this disgraced minister to resign from cabinet. For months, he has refused to do so. So we have called on the Prime Minister to fire that disgraced minister. But of course, this scandal-plagued, conflict-ridden Prime Minister has been found guilty not once but twice of violating the Conflict of Interest Act. He is standing behind his corrupt minister. It is an absolute disgrace. It underscores why this government can't be replaced soon enough and why this country needs a carbon tax election and a carbon tax election now.
There you go.
When we return back to this debate, the honourable member will have 11 minutes and 30 seconds left in his speech.
That was great parliamentary work.
Members, déclaration de député. The honourable member for Scarborough Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That was good. Drop some W's in the chat for Cooper, man. That was good.
Lebanese community in Scarborough Centre. They are business owners, professionals, and families who are an integral part of Scarborough's social and economic fabric. The Lebanese Canadian community nationwide numbers between 200,000 and 400,000 people. They are deeply concerned for their loved ones overseas, anxiously following every news report and waiting on each call or text to confirm their loved ones' safety. Their mental health and daily lives are deeply impacted by this ongoing crisis. This is no way to live. While the community and I appreciate the government's recent measures to support those already here in Canada, we believe more is necessary. We call on the government to enact special measures allowing the extended family members of Canadian citizens and permanent residents to seek temporary refuge here in Canada. No Canadian should be forced to leave their parents, spouses, children, grandparents, or siblings behind in danger. We urge the government to heed this call for compassion and assistance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Colchester, we'll try that again. The honourable member Cumberland Colchester.
It is important that Canadians pay tribute to the countless men and women who left behind homes and families to serve the cause of freedom in the face of unimaginable odds. Cumberland Colchester has been home to many Canadians who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Ivan Lee Crow was born near Stewiacke and landed on Juno Beach during D-Day with the North Nova Scotia Highlanders. On June 7, 1944, he was murdered along with 10 other Canadian prisoners by Hitler's 12th SS Division at the Ardennes Abbey, a despicable war crime that still resonates today. He was 21 years old. Daniel McMasters grew up on Yonge Street in Truro. He served in the legendary 1st Special Service Force during the liberation of Italy and was only 20 years old when he gave his life on May 28, 1944, near Anzio. I also want to pay a very special tribute to Lloyd Cody, a cherished member of our community and a proud veteran of the Second World War, who will celebrate his 100th birthday and is still going strong. God bless you, Lloyd, for all you've done, lest we forget.
Man, Conservatives are just so good at giving speeches.
Speaker, during Veterans Week, I'm honored to speak about Cyprus 2024, commemorating Canada's contribution to Cyprus since 1964. This year marks the 60th anniversary of Operation Snow Goose, Canada's longest peacekeeping mission, and the 50th anniversary of a forgotten war. I acknowledge the invaluable contributions of Major General Walter Holmes and Colonel James Holsworth, both retired and residents of Kingston, the Islands, who co-chaired the Cyprus 2024 committee. Their leadership ensures our veterans' sacrifices are remembered and celebrated. This week, veterans and their families will participate in guided tours, cultural excursions, historical walks, and remember services in Cyprus. They will meet Canadian UN soldiers currently serving, as well as Cypriots who lived through the conflict. This pilgrimage and the historical exhibits across Canada commemorate the past and strengthen our veteran community, fostering unity and remembrance. Let us honor their legacy and support our veterans and their families. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Salabri-Sur-Roy. Across Quebec.
All right, folks, this is going to be good. People are filing in, a lot of tensions.
And this heart is beating strong. More than 200,000 workers.
Trudeau is
collective
scheduled to be there.
Which generates more than $47 million. The social economy is the idea that the future belongs to everyone and we can all contribute to it to build a fairer and fairer world. Before Christmas comes, it's a reminder that we can choose a social economy by acting social projects and in your community and by committing to a board in your community to do business differently. We need to take action and be part of the solution. That's what all these entrepreneurs are doing that are the pride of our community.
If you guys haven't yet already,
so on behalf of the
I'd really appreciate it if you took the time.
Economy Month.
Takes a second to smash that like that.
Member from Lac St. Louis.
We're almost at 1,000.
Pioneer in global water management. William Cosgrove was a visionary who long ago recognized the crucial importance of water, not only for developing countries struggling with water scarcity for drinking and sanitation, but for a world increasingly in the grips of climate change. Bill's passion for water, the environment, and humanitarian development guided a 50-year career that had included 17 years at the World Bank. He also served as chair of the International Steering Committee of the Dialogue on Water and Climate, was a member of the Task Force on Water Millennium Development Goals, and directed the third UN World Water Report. Bill's attention was not limited to global water issues. Over 55 years ago, and well ahead of his time, he advocated for creating a catchment basin for excess rainwater in the city of Dollard-des-Ormeaux. William Cosgrove Centennial Park today serves as a vital practical purpose while offering local citizens a peaceful and refreshing oasis on a hot summer's day. To Bill's wife, Frances, and children, Anne-Marie, Carol Lee, Christopher John, Sean, Ginny, and Catherine, we offer our deepest condolences.
The Honourable Member from Calgary, Midnapore.
Senor Presidente, last month over 10 million Cubans spent nearly a week without light after their communist regime plunged them into darkness. Cubans took to the streets to protest the repressive government responsible for the hardships they continue to endure. But it's clear they need the international community to speak up in support. Canada used to be a voice that Cuban dissidents could rely on as they fought for freedom from Castro's dictatorship. However, under this Liberal government, this is no longer the case. Earlier this year, I spoke with Cuban dissidents and political prisoners.
Do they also think that Castro is Trudeau's dad?
In the honourable leader of the official opposition, Canada will have a prime minister who will advocate for freedom and democracy and stand against dictators. To the people of Cuba, we see you and support your fight. Someday soon, Canada will once again be an ally you can count on.
The Honourable Member for Ocho.
Is it crazy if I say I don't care too much about that issue?
So do nearly 4 million Canadians. That's 1 in 10 of us. our family, our friends, our neighbors. Insulin and other diabetes medication are expensive, and if you don't have private insurance, well, that's a huge monthly expense for you. All that's going to change because our government is making diabetes medication free for everyone.
I have the good fortune, Mr. Speaker, to represent many citizens, including several members of my own family, for whom sugar in their tea is not only an integral part of their daily lives, but truly a culture, a very rich culture. But let's face it, diabetes affects nearly 1 million Quebecers and 4 million Canadians, and the drugs to help treat it can be very expensive.
I don't care too much about Cuban issues. I'm not going to lie.
Yes, it'll be free for everyone.
Teresa with the 2 saying, hope everyone has a great Tuesday and Trump 2024.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. The Canadian Parks and Recreation Association is here on the Hill in Ottawa.
Thank you, Teresa.
With workers and advocates and professionals in the parks and recreational sectors right across the country. They're here advocating for public spaces, for
Anderson and Co. Contracting. Welcome to the membership. Thank you.
For operating costs, to make sure that parks and recreation and physical activity are top of mind to people up here in Ottawa and right across the country in influential positions like ours. Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of the fact that the CPRA is one of the top recipients of the Community Sport for All initiative, this government's effort to invest in community sport right across this country. And the result, with that $60 million investment in Canadians, is higher participation rates. In fact, 1 million Canadians said they got more active thanks to the Community Sport for All initiative, and that was due in part to the Canadian Parks and Recreation Association. So, Mr. Speaker, let's continue to invest in the sector so that every Canadian can benefit from the enriching experiences that we get from our parks and our outdoor spaces. And thank you to every worker in the recreational space.
The honourable member from Souris Moose Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canadians are struggling to keep their heads above water and to keep food on their tables. Over 2 million Canadians were forced to use food banks in March, a number that has almost doubled in the past 5 years. In my home province of Saskatchewan, food banks have seen a 42% increase in visits. Throughout my constituency, there are daily calls for donations to the many food banks in the Salvation Army. While children make up 30% of people using food banks across the country, in Saskatchewan, that number is almost 40%, a sad and alarming figure. Parents are going without meals so that their children have food, and those who once donated to the food bank are now the ones needing its help.
No doubt.
Fixing the situation, the NDP Liberals have continued to increase the cost of groceries by increasing the carbon tax by 23% and are on their way to quadrupling the tax in the future. It is time for Canadians to see a government that works to make their lives better, not worse. It's time for a carbon tax election.
The honourable member for...
Dude, where are all the Liberals?
Speaker, last year, we signed a landmark agreement with
It's
Quebec
empty. And Trudeau's supposed to be here.
Investment.
And they started like 10 minutes.
$1 billion in affordable housing.
I don't know what's going on.
Housing Accelerator Fund. And this, Mr. Speaker, will allow us to enable several projects to be carried out over the next few years, which means 8,000 affordable and social housing units across Quebec, including in my riding. Last week, the Conservative leader announced that he intends to cut this fund and rip up our agreement with Quebec and squabble with mayors. And this doesn't make sense. And the only part, this is too risque for Quebecers.
The honourable member from Battle River Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, here is the truth. There is only one person left keeping that Prime Minister in power, and that is the leader of the NDP. Canadians see clearly.
That's true.
All you need to do is think back to the big stunt the leader of the NDP pulled when he told Canadians that he ripped up his coalition deal with the Liberals. Since then, they have had ample opportunity to prove it, but has refused to do so. In fact, in his own words, the leader of the fourth party said, "The fact is the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people." Words don't equal action. That party continues to be beholden to that Prime Minister. The fact is that the NDP love the Liberals and they love the carbon tax, something they've voted for more than 24 times, even when it is sending more than 2 million Canadians a month to the food bank. Every day that Prime Minister remains in power, it is because of the sellout leader of the NDP. It's time for him to buck up and call a carbon tax election.
I'm on board with that. Mary Ng is there.
Colleagues, I'm going to ask for a couple of things. First, I'm going to ask members to not speak in turn. The members know who they are. So I'm going to ask.
My voice is coming back, so is the yelling.
And secondly, I'm going to ask all members, of course, as the Speaker.
Speaking of coming back, somebody give Trudeau a towel. He was in a room with Jagmeet.
Used in front of names of honourable members in this House.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker,
Why are people putting W's in the chat?
the Conservative Leader proposes a concrete plan to fight the housing
Did I say W's?
on new homes. In Quebec, for a $500,000 home, buyers will save $25,000 or $1,300 a year. This will add 30,000 new homes a year in Canada. This is a step in the right direction, says the Property Owner Corporation of Quebec.
Hold on, chat. I'm supposed to be the orchestrator here.
We know
If
that in
the
9 years,
live chat is a living, breathing organism, it means
inflationist policies of
I'm hands off.
And all this
I don't like that.
enthusiastic support of the Bloc Québécois Libre. Just recently, the Bloc leader voted twice, affirming his confidence in the Liberal Prime Minister. And for
Why are people putting W's in the chat? What happened?
Is going to make gains for Quebec, but the result, nothing, nothing, nothing. That is what the Bloc leader's concrete record is.
Stop.
Quebec, no gains, but 2 votes for Justin.
Red light.
We can't wait for election.
I do not consent.
Good government, a conservative government. It is rare that the Speaker has to intervene twice, but the honourable member, and reminder for all members.
You have trained me,
Not
Jasper.
refer to.
I've got no control of the chat.
First name.
It's a runaway train.
From Don Valley West.
Mr. Speaker, foreign interference is a danger to our country, and we all have to do everything in our power to call it out and to address it. Our government has made it a top priority. Canadians are nervous. The RCMP has evidence that agents of the Government of India are involved in serious criminal activities undermining our democracy. There are reports of a number of other countries intimidating citizens, interfering in elections, and leadership campaigns. The leader of the official opposition needs to do his part.
That's right.
He needs to show we're united in this fight. Right. Every member of this House took an oath. Some of us have leadership responsibilities.
Robert,
measures,
ferme la bouche.
Appropriate security clearances, so we can do our part, keeping Canada and Canadians safe.
Let's say it's because you're getting your voice back. People are putting W's because I'm getting my voice back? That makes sense.
Do his part and let Canadians stop wondering about what he may be hiding.
What's he hiding?
Oh, okay. It all makes sense now.
Member from North Island, Powell River.
Remember and Stirring Veterans Week, recognizing both Aboriginal Veterans Day and Remembrance Day, I want to thank every person who has served or is serving our country, and thank their loved ones as well, who we all know serve alongside them. Every year I am so grateful to the many legions who are in my riding that prepare sacred events around remembering the service of Canadian soldiers. I have 11 across my riding, and I want to name them all,
Mike,
Mr. Speaker.
With the 2 saying W for your
Legion,
winning towel comment about coming back or comebacks.
281. Port Alice Legion number 180. Gold River Legion 270. Sayward Legion number 147. Gold River Legion.
I'm unhinged when I'm sick.
Quadra Island.
Sick in the mind.
4. Alert Bay Legion 198, Comox Legion Branch 160, Powell River Legion number 164, and Texada Island. 2, 3.
The chat is its own organism, man. I got no control.
They hold space for veterans, and it's so important that we remember them lest
Never felt so vulnerable with my chat my entire life. No idea why people were doing W's.
The honourable member for Bellay-Champlain.
All right, I saw Trudeau. He's there.
During the first seconds of the record gala on Sunday.
When it's on his itinerary, it's usually secured.
Under the spell.
They've been kind of iffy with his itinerary lately.
They passed.
He's been in Ottawa,
of Quebec,
but
songwriting. And
it was actually scheduled in. It was penciled in.
On behalf of the Bloc, I would like to congratulate them for their album Inequality, and they won the Felix Award for the Album of the Year. And with their other artists, they build bridges between the various worlds that only an artist can understand. The Quebec
Come on, spit it out.
On Sunday expressed its full affection.
When you say spit it out, you don't know who you're talking to. Could be Jagmeet or Trudeau.
The honourable member from Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of NDP Liberals, the Canadian dream of home ownership has become a pipe dream, unless, of course, you're a friend of the Prime Minister. Today it was revealed that he purchased a $9 million condo on Billionaires Row in New York City for his good friend Tom Clark, after Clark complained that his old residence wasn't up to his standards.
Don't mention the bathtub.
To do the work of a consul general without Italian marble floors, a $5,000 coffee machine, and a golf simulator at your disposal. Wow. This revelation confirms that Tom Clark lied to committee about his involvement in the purchase. It also confirms evidence obtained by committee showing that Clark was instrumental when it came to purchasing the property. Canadians are fed up with this government. It's time for change, time for accountability, time for a Conservative government who will bring transparency and respect back to the Canadian taxpayer.
The honourable member from Kitchener South. Order. The honourable member from Kitchener South, Hespeler.
Mr. Speaker, Bill C-63, the Online Harms Act, is seeking to create a safer online space for all Canadians in this increasingly digital age. Online harms have real-world impacts with tragic, even fatal consequences, and the delays in our Parliament are putting more Canadians at risk every day. I think of the important work of Carol Todd, the mother of Amanda Todd, the 15-year-old girl who so tragically took her life 12 years ago after being victimized online. Carol stated in an interview that the filibuster that is happening right now and holding everything up is so frustrating. It's just wasting time. I've waited 12 years for this. Unfortunately, the important work this House undertakes has been held up due to Conservative delay tactics with support from opposition parties. We are working every day to pass important legislation for Canadians from coast to coast to coast, and the Conservatives are working every day to make sure this isn't the case.
Questions.
Oral questions. Questions. Honourable Leader of the Opposition to be next Prime Minister Canada.
Just 80 days after becoming Prime Minister, Stephen Harper promised to put an end to, or managed to put an end to, tariffs on softwood lumber. But this Prime Minister caved in and allowed Donald Trump to reimpose those tariffs, and Mr. Biden doubled them. Stephen Harper entered into a deal with Barack Obama in order to avoid the
Come on, translator.
Buy America Act. Can we have an election so that
Obama
Canadians could have a prime minister who will stand up for Canadians? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, what we see once again is the Conservative leader saying anything and everything while we stand up against Donald Trump. We stood up against him when he wanted to renegotiate.
No, you didn't.
NAFTA. And it was the Conservatives, including Stephen Harper, who were encouraging us to back down and not offend the Americans. On the contrary, we stood up for ourselves. We protected supply management. We protected steel and aluminum workers. We protected Canadian jobs all across this country, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. This Liberal Prime Minister not only capitulated to Obama, Trump, and Biden, he also gave $500 million worth of investment that left this country, impoverishing Canadians in the process. 10 years ago, the New York Times said life in Canada has the wealthiest middle class in the world. And Canada seems to be outstripping even the U.S. Today, it's the opposite. Canadians are poorer than Americans. Why is this Prime Minister creating jobs for Americans?
Yeah.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Because Trudeau hates Canada, man.
The opposition leader continues to claim that Canada's broken, but at the same time, he wants to get rid of the investments that will help Canadians, for example, with the construction of new homes. The millions of dollars that we've sent to the government of Quebec to build new affordable housing, if it was up to him, he would cut and impose austerity on Quebecers and all Canadians. They don't want that. We don't want that. We need to invest to help alleviate the housing crisis, and that not the kind of policies the opposition leader is proposing.
Minister Stephen Harper only 80 days to get a softwood lumber deal that put an end to the tariffs and reimbursed what were already collected. And then this Liberal Prime Minister capitulated, allowed Trump to reimpose the tariffs and Biden to double them. Harper got us an exemption to Buy America. This Prime Minister then capitulated, allowed Trump and Biden to reimpose them, hurting our construction workers and our providers of steel. Why can't we have a carbon tax election so that we can have a Prime Minister that no longer capitulates to the Americans, but instead will stand up for Canada?
There you go. And that's something that Trump is going to respect when Pierre stands up to him like that.
I just answered that question in French. Allow me instead to take a moment to condemn unequivocally the violence we've seen in South Asian communities across the country over the past few nights. Let me be
Yeah, the Hindu temples and stuff.
The individuals who are inciting violence and division and hatred in no way represent either the Sikh community or the Hindu community in Canada. At a time of Diwali, Bandi Chor Divas, we're seeing communities come together to celebrate their diversity and their strength. We will continue to stand for the unity of Canadians.
Okay, but can you answer the question?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Sir, this is a Wendy's.
New York Times 10 years ago. Life in Canada, home of the world's most affluent middle class. Median income in Canada appears to have surpassed median income in the United States. Oh, what a decade can do. Now, American workers make almost $20,000 more than their Canadian counterparts. They get twice as much investment every single year. The gap between our per capita GDP and that of the United States is now the worst in a century after this Prime Minister's rising taxes, bureaucracy, and blocking of energy projects. I know why Harris and Trump want to create jobs for Americans, but why does this Prime Minister want to help them?
There you go.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the silence of the Conservative leader is deafening when it comes to what's happening in the South Asian communities right now.
He's already condemned it, bro.
Not only is he not stepping...
All right, every question and answer today should be about the Hindus and the Sikhs.
Must stand together, and all South Asian Canadians, Sikh, Hindu, Jain, Buddhist, are celebrating together this weekend. But he even refuses to take the issue seriously enough to get the security clearance necessary to be briefed on threats to Canada and to Canadians. That's not leadership, Mr. Speaker.
I hope Pierre just gets up and goes, I condemn, answer the question.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Now you know his real agenda. He wants to distract from all the economic misery he's called at home. And so he uses divisions here at home. These divisions are the result of him. Under his leadership, we've seen a 251% increase in hate crimes, firebombings of synagogues, bullets shot at Jewish children's schools, 100 churches burned and vandalized, and now
W for bringing up the churches.
Riots on the streets of Brampton. This never happened before this Prime Minister. Does he take ownership for the divisions he's caused and the violence that has resulted?
Good job on bringing up the churches, my guy.
Order. Colleagues.
Mute the microphone, I dare you.
Ask members, please.
I'll do another petition.
Far into the House to please not take the floor unless they are recognized by the Speaker. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, people watching that last answer will know and note the assuredness with which the Leader of the Opposition declared all the causes and the sources of the terrible violence we're seeing, when the reality is he refuses to take the necessary briefings that our security agencies are offering him to understand the threats to Canada. Why won't he get the security clearance necessary to protect Canadians?
Bro can't answer a single question.
Order.
Mute the microphone, I dare.
Colleagues, it does not do well when on one side of the House is asked to keep quiet. The other side of the House should do the same. All members should do the same.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the government has tabled regulations to cap greenhouse gas emissions. It's a bit complacent because the deadlines are long, extremely long, and it's Quebecers and Canadians who are paying the price. This is going to give polluters a holiday on emissions control, and this regulation is may appear inadequate given the oil and gas lobby here in the House. Could this not be better done through statute? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as a government, we have always chosen to do everything that's necessary to reduce emissions, to protect Canadian prosperity, and to protect Canadians' future. That's why we're moving ahead with a cap on greenhouse gas emissions coming from the oil industry. This is an industry that is making record profit.
Dude, this cap is cutting over 112,000 jobs.
Emissions.
And Danielle Smith is actually suing the federal government. She's suing Trudeau because of this.
Fair share in reducing emissions and protecting.
It's cutting over 112,000 jobs, guys.
Instead of considering the green equalization or green banking or funding of green technology, as the Bloc has been advocating for a long time. The Prime Minister himself has said that this is an industry whose profits have skyrocketed since the pandemic. Instead of imposing standards that aren't tough enough, why doesn't he impose tougher standards? And that way he could go before the electorate finally with a bold record on the environment. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I know full well that both the Bloc and we have the same opinion on this. No industry should be allowed to pollute.
Come on. Just a couple of Quebecers with small peckers. Dude, 112,000 jobs are going to be lost because of this.
That industry contributes almost 1/3 of
that's not right.
emissions. And so that industry has a greater capacity to reduce.
Danielle Smith is going to successfully sue
So we agree
Justin Trudeau and the federal government for this.
Technologies that will help reduce emissions and help them do their fair share.
Honourable member from Burnaby South.
Who here doesn't have a family doctor? Well, 5 million Canadians don't. Now, Loblaws owns Maple, and a family doctor working at Maple's will charge you $80 a month per person to see a doctor. Now, things are gotten so bad, this is predatory. The Prime Minister lets you down, and then Galen Weston swoops in to profit off it. Why is this Prime Minister letting Galen Weston profit off of people's pain?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize that it is the provincial area of jurisdiction to deliver health care in this country, but it is the federal responsibility to make sure that that health care remains public and universal and single payer. And that is exactly what we're doing by investing a record $200 billion in health care over the coming years that will oblige the provinces to invest in public health care, to hire more doctors, particularly family doctors, to reduce wait times and to improve their mental health services. These are things that Canadians expect, including the federal government expecting it of the provinces.
L'honorable député de Burnaby Sud.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
We didn't even hear him because of the translator.
Healthcare is a jungle. It could cost $213 for a minor emergency. It's so profitable that real estate investors are opening private clinics. And the Prime Minister will the Prime Minister finally stand up and put an end to all of this? The Right Honourable Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, unlike the NDP, we understand and respect the fact that the delivery of health care comes under provincial jurisdiction. But the federal government is responsible for ensuring that our healthcare system remains public, and the federal government has to be there to help with the funding. That's why we've put on the table $200 billion in investments for the next 10 years, which will allow for the hiring of more family doctors, reducing wait times, more support for mental health and workers in the system. And that's what all Canadians expect.
The honourable member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
This Liberal NDP Prime Minister presides over the worst GDP per person growth since the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And it's no surprise. His high taxes and woke policies like carbon tax scams, job-killing capital gains tax hike, and oil and gas cap have made Canadians poorer. In fact, U.S. GDP grew 2.8% as Canadians' GDP per person declined for 2 years, driving out business, investment, and jobs. Will this Prime Minister axe the tax hikes that make Canadians poorer?
The honourable.
Oh, here we go with the little chihuahua.
What the Conservative will talk about is the record level of investment we have seen in the country, Mr. Speaker.
Bro, shut your mouth.
For Canadians watching at home, people are wondering, Mr. Speaker, they're really wondering, why is the leader of the Conservative not getting his security clearance, Mr. Speaker? What does he have to hide, Mr. Speaker? People on the street of Canada are asking, Mr. Speaker, get the clearance, get the briefing, get on and do your job, man.
Do your job. How about you? Shut up.
The honourable member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
We're talking about the Canadians. They're starving and they want to make personal attacks on the Conservative leader. These economic arsonists will do anything to deflect away from their failed record. Canadian workers are $22,000 poorer than U.S. workers. If Canada had just kept pace with the U.S. over the last 2 years, Canadian workers would have $6,200 more every year. And now Canada is poorer than Alabama. Why don't these economic arsonists call a carbon tax election so Canadian workers can finally fire them?
All of Canada is poorer than the state of Alabama? Look at Pierre standing up and barking.
And people with disabilities.
Mr. Speaker, we won't take any lessons from the Conservatives on how to deliver for Canadians. While they keep their headed agenda, Mr. Speaker, we know exactly what they'll do. They'll cut dental care for 9 million Canadians. They'll end $10 a day childcare. They'll cancel the National School Food Program, Mr. Speaker. Conservatives, Mr. Speaker, won't tell you their plan because they don't want Canadians to know. Just like, Mr. Speaker, their leader won't get the security
Sweet home Alabama, no doubt.
Shame on them. What are they hiding?
The honourable member from Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, more bad news from experts. Last week, economists at National Bank released an analysis that said, quote, GDP per capita has fallen by about 4% cumulatively since 2022, which is unprecedented outside a recession. This is a made-in-Canada per person per capita GDP recession caused by a government that's hiked taxes on everything, energy, housing, banks, investment, that's driving out investment and making Canadians poorer. When will the government admit its mistake and reverse course on tax hikes that are driving out investment like they reversed course on so many other issues?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, if the Conservatives would like to make comparisons with the United States, I have one for them. Canada ran a deficit of just 1.1% of GDP in 2023, Mr. Speaker. That's compared to a 6.3% of GDP deficit in the United States of America, Mr. Speaker. We have made sure to be responsible with our balance sheet, and we are doing it while supporting vulnerable Canadians, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives' hidden agenda is to cut programs that Canadians rely on.
The Conservatives are laughing like hyenas.
From Wellington Halton Hills. Mr. Speaker, I'll quote another expert relative to Canada's position with the United States. The Governor of the Bank of Canada, who last week said, quote, foreign capital, even some Canadian capital, is going to the United States because they can get faster regulatory approvals, end quote. Yeah. 2 years ago in Washington, the finance minister in her speech said, quote, Canada must and will show similar generosity in fast-tracking, for example, the energy and mining projects our allies need to heat their homes and to manufacture electric vehicles, end quote. Simple question. Can the government tell us which mining and energy projects they have fast-tracked since the speech in Washington?
Not one.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, I know that member to be an honourable.
I'm going to ask the Honourable Member.
They're going to tell him to get a security clearance or something stupid.
To not take the floor, and that's recognized by the Chair. The Honourable Member. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons from the top.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know that member to be someone who cares about Canada's standing in the world and who I thought cared about Canada's national security as well. But what I find perplexing and what I think must be difficult for him to understand is why is it that the leader of the official opposition is refusing to get a security clearance? Why is it that he would rather ignore the threats to Canada's security? What is it that he's trying to hide, or what is it that he doesn't want to know? The NCCOP reported that a conservative leadership campaign was under threat by foreign actors. Is that something he doesn't want to know about?
Called it. I fucking called it.
The honourable member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Canadian GDP has declined in last quarters. This means Canadians are getting poorer, their quality of life is declining dramatically, and the story is exactly the opposite in the U.S., where there's 2.8% GDP growth. Canadians are facing a recession caused by the Prime Minister's increases in carbon tax, housing tax, and capital gains tax. I know it's hard for the
simple, guys.
To understand.
In order to think like a liberal,
he's never been in need himself.
You got to cross your eyes,
compassion by eliminating
pucker your butthole, and drop your IQ by half. And if you do those steps in that order,
enjoyed record investments. Take Honda, for exexample.
You could probably anticipate what their replies are going to be.
$19 billion Honda has invested. And the largest investment in BHP's history also, $22 billion in Saskatchewan. Record investments are being made in Canadian companies. Mr. Speaker, Canada is a winner in this century's economy, and we will continue working for Canadians. The honourable member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, how many jobs are Canadians losing because of the quadrupling of the carbon tax?
Over 112,000 jobs from the oil and gas sector.
Capital gains tax increase as
cap
well.
in the emissions.
Where's the gain, Mr. Speaker? And what we've learned through Statistics Canada is that the income of Canadian households has declined while it's on the increase in the U.S. In Canada, people are having to pay through their teeth. The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Let's talk about investment in my colleague's riding. Affordable housing units are being built as we speak and the funding for that was questioned by the Conservative leader because he wants to cut back on those deals with the provinces. Would he ask the Conservative leader, who's sitting just 4 seats over for him, if he could get his security clearance so that he can protect all Conservative members against foreign interference?
That's all they got.
The honourable member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Tonight, in the presidential elections, Americans will choose who gets to reopen the North American Free Trade Deal in 2026. Our most important free trade agreement is at risk of being renegotiated. Trump has promised to do that, and Harris voted against CUSMA. That's why it's dangerous to let 2 senators, Peter Boehm and Peter Harder, block C-282. They want to overturn the vote of elected officials to put supply management back on the bargaining table as early as 2026. It's the Prime Minister who appointed them. Will he finally ask them to pass C-282 so it's enforced before any renegotiation? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind our Bloc colleagues that senators are independent. What he's saying is that the Bloc doesn't have the power to protect supply management. The only government, the only party, the only group of members who has the will and the desire and the ability to protect supply management is a Liberal government, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Berthier-Masquinongé. The Prime Minister knows that if C-282 isn't passed, the Americans could put supply management back on the bargaining table as early as 2026. He also knows it won't be him doing the bargaining, it'll be the Conservative leader. If he doesn't act to put C-282 ahead of any negotiation, he's putting our agriculture in the hands of the Conservatives, the same Conservatives who conceded supply management loopholes in agreements with Europe and Asia.
I don't think this guy's wearing a poppy.
Will the Prime Minister intervene, or has he already done so silently? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
She's also not wearing a poppy.
I can assure you that with our Prime Minister, the Minister of International Trade, the Minister of Agriculture, and myself and many of our colleagues, we are talking to senators and we are asking them to get that bill back here quickly. But any legislation can be amended. The best way to protect farmers in Quebec and all across Canada is to ensure that we keep a Liberal government in office for a long time to come. The honourable member for Berthier-Masquinongé. The last answer to my last question was yes, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to interrupt the member. I would ask members, please, to allow the member who has the floor to ask his question so that everyone here, including the Speaker,
at least he's not muting the microphone.
The honourable member for Berthier-Masquinongé. From the top, please. It seems that the answer to my last question was yes, Mr. Speaker. No one in this House should tolerate 2 senators overturning our democratic choice to protect supply management. Message to Misters Beam and Harder. If you want to sacrifice supply management, then run for office. Face the voters for once instead of cashing checks for life in the Senate. Come and present your ideas to farmers in Berthier-Masquinongé. Come and face me. The Liberals are looking for candidates. Will the Prime Minister finally tell them to put their faces on election signs or mind their own business?
Holy smokes.
The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. The worst way, Mr. Speaker, to defend supply management is to align with the Conservative Party and vote along with them. They're the ones who pose the greatest risk, the greatest threat to supply management. We're the ones who stood up and defended it against the U.S. And unfortunately, what the Bloc is doing is getting in cahoots with the Conservatives.
Honourable Member from Prince George, Northern Rockies.
After 9 years and 3 U.S. presidents, the NDP, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister has failed to get a deal with the Americans on softwood lumber, while our previous Conservative government got it done within 80 days. 2 more mills in BC are closing because of this Prime Minister's incompetence.
Yes,
Wayne and Marie Harder have seen their logging businesses in Fort St. John destroyed by these NDP Liberals. I asked Wayne yesterday, who would you fire in this NDP Liberal government? Wayne's answer, all of them. Will the Prime Minister do the right thing for forestry families and call an election today?
There you go. Way to represent PG, my guy.
I'm going to ask once again the colleagues at the end, particularly the member from New Westminster, Burnaby, and Timmins St. James, Bay James, to please not take the floor unless recognized by the Speaker. The Honourable Minister for International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I want to say to forestry industry workers and those in the sector how important they are to Canada's economy, and indeed how important they are to building affordable homes in this country. I know that we continue to work very hard and we have said that getting a deal is indeed the best way to go. But I think what Canadians want to know is why it is that on this side of the House, when we renegotiated NAFTA, on this side of the House, when we stood up to defend tariffs against steel.
Bro, even her poppy's made in China.
We are always standing up for workers. What they are doing on the other side of the House.
Look at that. That's not even a real poppy. It's made in China.
The Honourable Member from Miramichi, Grand Lake.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, the NDP Liberals are not worth the cost to Canada's economy. While the Prime Minister dismissed his failure on softwood lumber as a small issue, the U.S. slapped a 14.5% tariff on Canada. This negatively impacts the 24,000 New Brunswick forestry workers. The Prime Minister has failed with 3 straight U.S. presidents, while Prime Minister Harper got a deal in just 80 days. When will the Prime Minister finally stand up for New Brunswick forestry workers?
Yeah. Bunch of suits and ties making rules for everyone else.
And energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We on this side of the House have been working very hard in the interests of forestry workers and forestry companies here in Canada. We are working very hard to progress negotiations with the Americans. We are working very hard on value-added forestry. It is something that we are committed to continuing to do, including working with Irving Forest Products in New Brunswick. I would say, though, that on this side of the House, we are working very hard in the best interests of Canadians. We would expect elected officials across the board to be doing that, and Canadians are asking why the Leader of the Opposition will not get his security clearance.
Exactly. Because it's a gag order. Let's move on.
The Honourable Member from Prince Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 9 years, the NDP Liberals are not worth the cost. Just weeks after the U.S. hit Canada with a 14.5% tariff on softwood lumber, this Prime Minister dismissed its failures and the impact on Canadian workers and the impact of our forestry sector as small issues. Since the PM's comments in New York City, 2 sawmills in BC have closed, putting over 500 workers out of work. Canadian producers have paid $9 billion in tariffs to the U.S. From softwood lumber to Buy America. Why has this Prime Minister repeatedly backed down to the U.S.?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this government always stands up for Canadian workers, and it always stands up for Canadian industry.
You're cutting 112,000 jobs because you're cap on emissions.
While the Conservative Party of Canada said to capitulate. When it came to supporting our steel and aluminum workers, we stood against those tariffs. We hit back hard. What did the other side say, Mr. Speaker? The Conservative Party of Canada said capitulate. Right. When it comes to standing up for Canada's national security, we will always do that. But what about the Conservative Party of Canada? Mr. Speaker, their leader won't even get a security clearance to know what's really going on. What is it he's trying to hide? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Then I have
the Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le Fjord.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this Liberal government and 3 American presidents, we still don't have a softwood lumber agreement with the United States.
The only softwood is Trudeau.
The previous Conservative Prime Minister got a solution at 90 days after being elected. The incompetence and lack of leadership from this Prime Minister means we don't have a deal. 3 sawmills have filmed recently in Quebec, including one in my riding. 100 workers have been let go. Why are the Liberals still abandoning forestry workers? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for my colleague, and he knows that we've always stood up for the forestry sector and its workers. But the real question, Mr. Speaker, that Canadians are asking today, the real question they're asking is, why is the Conservative leader not getting his security clearance? Why, Mr. Speaker? What is he hiding from Canadians, Mr. Speaker? That's the real question of the day. That's the elephant in the room, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative leader needs to get the security clearance. He'll get the briefings then, and then he'll be able to do his work, because that's what Canadians expect from a leader. They expect.
The only leader that likes to be gagged is Trudeau and Jagmeet.
The honourable member from the Nanaimo League.
Not Pierre.
Mr. Speaker, women veterans will be attending Remembrance Day services this week. Despite their courage and dedication, many of them will be asked if the medals they are wearing belong to their husbands or sons. Women veterans and their loved ones have sacrificed.
I remember she brought up this issue last year.
They cannot be made invisible. Will the minister make sure the organizers of the National Remembrance Day ceremony include women veterans, giving them the respect they deserve?
Here. The
Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Why is that being brought up in the House?
Day of Veterans Week, I first of all want to take a moment to thank all the men and women that served in the Canadian Armed Forces and continue to serve with bravery. We owe them a debt of gratitude.
Dude, I used to get the same haircut.
As we attend Remembrance Day,
My mom would put a bowl over my head.
all through Canada, we certainly want to make
But they put a bowl on her face.
moment to really thank the veterans that have served. I also encourage them to attend Legions and also many commemorative services that will take place all over Canada to thank both men and women that have served in the Canadian Armed Forces. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from London Fanshawe.
For 17 years, the Office of the Veteran Ombuds has been shining a light on the neglect of veterans. We have a sacred obligation to care for those who served, but successive Liberal and Conservative governments have ignored their reports and recommendations. Veterans need action, and we need to empower the Ombuds by giving them the power to compel documents and issue binding recommendations. When will the Liberals make the necessary changes to create a truly independent Ombuds so she can be the champion veterans deserve?
The Honourable Minister for Veterans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the services that we've provided to veterans across this country, since 2016, our government has invested more than $11.5 billion in additional services and support to help our veterans and their families. Unlike the previous Conservative government, Mr. Speaker, we have acted. The previous Conservative government closed Veterans Affairs offices across this country. And the first thing that we did, we reopened all 9 offices, plus we opened an additional one. They also slashed the public service by 1,000 people, Mr. Speaker, public servants that provided direct supports to veterans. We will absolutely always be there for veterans and their families, Mr. Speaker.
Bravo.
The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Mr. Speaker, our government has an ambitious plan when it comes to housing. Fighting homelessness, making home buying more accessible with the first home.
An ambitious plan after 9 years.
Putting federal land on the market for housing and supporting co-ops.
They failed over 9 years, but don't worry, folks. They're going to fix it now.
Measures will increase access to housing around the country and increase housing stock across the country.
No, we trust you.
Minister of Economic Development for Quebec. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Housing Accelerator Fund is going to help to build thousands of social and affordable housing units. Even Conservative MPs know it, and they've written to the Housing Minister to ask to access that program in their own ridings. The irresponsible plan from the Conservative leader to cut investments is going to endanger 8,000 accessible housing units in Quebec, Mr. Speaker. We can't trust a leader who's offering just cuts and slogans, but especially...
So how is she saying
security clearance
that Conservatives support their housing plan, but simultaneously saying Conservatives are going to cut their housing plan?
From Battleford's Lloydminster.
After 9 years of the NDP Liberals, the majority of young Canadians
Canadians have now abandoned the dream of home ownership. While housing starts fail to keep up with Canada's population growth, the Americans are building 4 times more housing per new resident. Conservatives have announced a plan to axe the federal sales tax on new homes, and we have called on the provinces to do the same. Our plan means more housing and savings for young Canadians who are desperately trying to enter the housing market. Will the NDP Liberals reignite the dream of homeownership and axe the federal GST on housing?
That would help tremendously.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
The list is growing, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday we learned in the Toronto Star that the MP for Kamloops on the Conservative side has joined many other Conservative colleagues to advocate for programs that their leader wants to cut. Programs like the Housing Accelerator Fund that are going to lead to more home building in his community and communities across the country, Mr. Speaker. They want to make these cuts. They have no vision on housing. Therefore, they have no vision on the future for Canada, Mr. Speaker. It's not serious.
And I ask the Honourable Member for Kamloops, Thompson Caribou, as well as the member for Coast of Bays, Central, Notre Dame, to please not take the floor unless they are recognized by the Speaker. I thank the Honourable Members. The Honourable Member from Battleford, Lloydminster.
Speaker, that wannabe minister is so desperately clinging on to their $8 billion failed Liberal housing photo op program that has built 0 houses. Policy commitment made in the past 2 decades. And those aren't my words, Mr. Speaker. That's what the West End Home Builders Association has said. And the Canadian Real Estate Association also called it a positive step towards making home ownership more attainable for Canadians. Will the NDP Liberals listen to the experts and axe the federal sales tax on housing?
That would help out a lot of people, man. Pierre's standing up and barking at Trudeau.
Housing, infrastructure, and communities.
It's a difficult subject for them, Mr. Speaker, obviously. The MP for Kamloops, the MP for Simcoe North, the MP for Central Okanagan, the MP, and he's the best friend of the Conservative leader, the MP for St. Albert Edmonton, Mr. Speaker, went behind the back of the Conservative leader to advocate for the Accelerator Fund that's going to lead to more home building. In this House of Commons, on social media, they parrot their leader's talking points, but they don't believe in those talking points, evidently, Mr. Speaker, because they're advocating for good government programs that are going to get more homes built for Canadians.
It's a zoo.
Please.
It's a zoo today.
Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, the 2 leaders of the Liberal Bloc Party aren't worth the cost of housing, but the common sense Conservatives will axe the GST on new home sales. For an $800,000 home, which cost only $400,000 when our leader was housing minister, that will allow buyers to save $40,000. That's $2,200 per year in mortgage payments, Mr. Speaker. When will the 2 leaders of the Liberal Bloc Party axe the federal tax on housing, or are they going to continue to fund their photo op programs? The Honourable Minister of Economic Development for Quebec. Well, I would like to share with my honourable colleague a simple mathematical rule, Mr. Speaker. It's very simple. 6 is lower than 8,000, and that's the number of homes that the Conservative leader is putting in danger. 8,000 with his cuts. He needs to answer to Quebecers. Why won't he do it? I would invite all members, including ministers and leaders of the opposition parties, to take their conversations outside of the House. Please. The Honourable Member.
Hey, it's better than muting the mic.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' failures in housing have been resounding, Mr. Speaker. The 2 leaders of the Liberal Bloc Party have doubled the cost of housing, rent, and down payments. Because the Liberals record is such a disaster, the common sense Conservatives will cut $8 billion in failed, ineffective Liberal housing programs. Mr. Speaker, when the Conservative leader was Minister of Housing, he built 195,000 new homes. And we have the receipts. Why are the two leaders of the Liberal Bloc Party so far to the left that they've left Canadians behind when it comes to housing? The Honourable Minister of Economic Development for Quebec. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to know how my honourable colleague can say to his constituents how they are going to cut the 80 housing units that are planned for his riding under the Housing Accelerator Fund. But his constituents also want to know why the Conservative leader doesn't want to get his security clearance and protect Canada's democratic integrity, the integrity of his own party. The Honourable Member for Tariffs de Blainville. The Liberals promised a major reform of EI in 2015, then again in 2019. Then in 2021, and then no later than 2022 promised, and then by Christmas 2022 pinky swear. 9 years, 4 ministers later, the Liberals have done nothing. EI is still failing 6 out of 10 workers.
I mean, that's why we should call an election, man. The Bloc is against them. The NDP's fed up.
EI.
Conservatives are ready.
And it's going to fix these inequalities. Will the Liberals support it? The Honourable Minister for Economic Development. Well, Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for my colleague from the Bloc Québécois, and when it comes to the question of modernizing the employment insurance program, that's a priority for our government, and we have made major changes, Mr. Speaker. We've extended the illness benefits to 26 weeks. We have extended the 5 weeks of additional support for seasonal workers, Mr. Speaker. We've also added important benefits for adoptive parents, and we are going to continue to modernize the EI system for all Canadians from coast to coast to coast. The Honourable Member for Therese de Blainville. With C418, the Bloc is moving forward where the Liberals have failed since 2015. We are proposing a single eligibility criteria at 420 hours. Increased benefits from 55 to 60%, increasing the minimum benefit period to 35 weeks, increasing special illness benefits to 50 weeks, and the list goes on. That's what a real reform looks like. Will the Liberals support us?
They're not going to, so you should call a vote of non-confidence.
The Honourable Minister of Employment. Well, Mr. Speaker, there's a gang who want to support us in continuing to modernize the EI system. We've heard loud and clear at our summit on the labour force for the 21st century. Listen, I understand that the Bloc Québécois wants to move forward with certain ideas here in the House, but they are going to disassociate from their friends, the Conservatives, and support us so that we can get back to work, the very important work that we need to get done here in the House of Commons. That's the question of the day.
The Honourable Member from Hastings, Lennox-Naddington.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of NDP Liberals, they are not worth the cost of housing, and the majority of young Canadians are pointing to this government's failure to manage the economy as the reason their dreams of home ownership are dashed. The Conservatives have a plan. Scrapping the GST on new home sales will save young Canadians tens of thousands of dollars on new homes, and the Conservative leader already wrote the premiers asking them to match his pledge provincially. Mr. Speaker, will the NDP Liberals axe the federal GST on housing so more young Canadians can afford a home?
The Honourable Parliamentary
Conservatives just simply want to help Canadians, man.
Speaker, I've answered the matter already, and on this issue of housing, she ought to look one seat ahead of her to the MP for Peterborough. Earlier today, there was a 2-hour filibuster in the House of Commons committee responsible for housing, where we could have actually talked about housing, but we had to listen to the Conservatives filibuster for 2 hours, as I say, because they were trying to defend their colleague, who only a few days ago said that homelessness And homeless people and poverty lead to crime inevitably, Mr. Speaker. They made a natural connection between the two, blaming the poor for crime in Canada. It's unacceptable. We got to deal with stigma, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Lennox, Hastings and Addington.
Let me be clear and call out the facts on the failures of these Liberals. The Liberals' own housing advisor said it was hard to deny that the Housing Accelerator Fund is turning out to be nothing more than a heist of tax dollars flowing from the feds to the municipalities. In contrast, the Conservative plan will apply to every single new home build, regardless if it's in downtown Toronto or in Bancroft. The Conservative plan will take power from the pens of bureaucrats to the hammers of builders. Mr. Speaker, will this government endorse the Conservative plan to scrap the GST on housing? Yes or no?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing.
More empty slogans from the Conservative side, Mr. Speaker. But you know what's not empty? You know what's real? The example of the Conservative leader who only months ago went down to encampments and filled people in their most vulnerable state. That's right. Who before that visited a home of a working class person, a server, and called it a shack, Mr. Speaker. Yep. So is it any surprise that the MP for Peterborough looks at poverty as something that's caused by those on the street, that points to the poor and makes them responsible for issues of criminality? We have to deal with stigma if we're going to deal with the homelessness crisis. They're not serious.
The honourable member from Kamloops, Thompson and Caribou.
There was chaos, yelling, screaming, running for cover. And no, Mr. Speaker, I'm not talking about the last Liberal caucus meeting. I'm talking about a police chase that happened in downtown Toronto.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Like a scene from a movie. Police chasing two people reportedly on bail. Rather than take accountability, this minister's response, do this, blame other people, blame the provinces. When will the Prime Minister and this Justice Minister stand in their place and take accountability for their failed catch and release policy?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, let's talk about accountability. There are currently 700 fewer police officers working in the City of Toronto today than when I was the police chief only 9 years ago. Mr. Speaker, there's been a 23% reduction in police per population in Toronto over those 9 years. And Mr. Speaker, how did that happen? 2 consecutive Conservative mayors under the unwatchful eye of a Conservative premier allowed the hiring freeze and those cuts to take place. If you want to look for accountability, look in the mirror.
Oh, look. What else happened in the past 9 years, dumbass? Trudeau.
Order, please.
Freaking idiot.
The honourable member for Ottawa-Vanier. Mr. Speaker, through the First and Second World Wars, over 300,000 Canadians in uniform left Halifax to go to Europe. Canada has hundreds of thousands of veterans, all of whom have their own specific experience. Every year, Veterans Week is the opportunity to reaffirm that as Canadians, we have the duty to remember the sacrifices that those who have served made, and that those who continue to serve continue to make. Can the Minister of Veterans Affairs please inform this House about the theme of Veterans Week this year? The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs. I'd like to thank my colleague from Ottawa-Vanier for her important question and for her hard work for our veterans and their families. The theme of Veterans Week this year is Canadian Armed Forces Around the World. It's a theme that reflects the role that Canada has long played in promoting and defending peace and security around the world. Mr. Speaker,
Canadians across the country to either attend Legions this week to thank a veteran and also to make sure that they take part in a commemorative service in their community. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, goodness, her voice is so annoying.
The honourable member from Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Vito Lakes.
The Liberals' $9 million cover-up of their luxury condo purchase in New York City is now unraveling. Newly uncovered government documents show that the Prime Minister's media pal, Tom Clark, lied before a parliamentary committee. Wow. He had previously said that he didn't weigh in on the purchase, but now we know he in fact said that it required urgent replacement. After 9 years of these NDP Liberals, they're not worth the cost, the corruption, or lies from their insiders. So will the Prime Minister fire his buddy Tom Clark for lying to Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I just went to the OGO committee and I answered all his questions for an hour, and we've been talking about this issue. First,
Canada's action figure, Melanie Joly.
value for money in this transaction, $7 million will be refunded. Second, all the process were, of course, followed. And finally, we don't fall into the character assassination that he's doing about an important consul. But not only that, at the time of the U.S. election today, when all Canadians are looking down south to see what's going to happen, we need to invest in the American-Canadian relationship, and that's exactly what we're doing, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Vito Lakes.
These economic vandals bought a $9 million condo in Manhattan for the Prime Minister's buddy, and they're subsidizing his rent to the tune of $40,000 per month after doubling rents for Canadians, doubling mortgages for Canadians, and presiding over a country for 9 years with homeless encampments springing up under bridges in communities from coast to coast to coast. If that's not bad enough, Canadians are lined up at food banks in record numbers. 25% of Canadians don't know where their next meal is coming from. If they won't fire Clark for lying, will they fire him for blowing $9 million? The
Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Apparently, Mr. Clark was good enough for the Conservative when he was moderating their leadership race, but that's another issue. That's another issue, Mr. Speaker. What I want to say today is, as Canadians are looking down south to see what's going on and to take act of the will of the American people, we will invest in the relationship between Canada and the U.S., contrary to what the Conservatives want to do. And of course, we won't take the recommendation of having an official residence outside of Manhattan. Why? Because only 2 countries in the world do so, Bangladesh and Afghanistan, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Order. That includes the Honourable Member from South Shore, St. Margaret.
At least he's not muting the microphone. I'll give him that,
Honourable Member from Calgary, Midnapore.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, Tom Clark lied to committee, saying that he didn't know about the purchase of a $9 million condo. The Minister of Foreign Affairs also said she didn't know about the purchase of a $9 million condo. She also said she didn't know that a Canadian warship was next to Russian warships in the port of Havana. She also said that she didn't know that a senior global affairs official attended a Russian embassy party. Mr. Speaker, isn't that the role of the Minister of Foreign Affairs to know?
Yeah. Melanie Joly doesn't know anything.
For Foreign Affairs.
I know I have a lot of time for the member opposite because she used to be the consul in Dallas, and she knows how much it's important to be investing in her diplomatic network in the U.S. So, of course, we'll continue to do so. We'll continue to invest across our consulates, across also the U.S., because if there's one country in the world who knows about the Americans, who knows about the U.S., it's Canada.
She's so weird, man. She's a LARPer. She's a live action role player.
From Richmond Centre.
Mr. Speaker, previous Conservative government has brought cuts and challenges that left many veterans struggling, particularly in British Columbia, and we don't want to see this happen again. Our Liberal government has worked diligently to address these issues. As we reflect on these changes, let us remember that our commitment to veterans must be unwavering. Can the Minister of Citizen Services share how our government has expanded our reach to better support veterans from coast to coast to coast?
Well, veterans do not like the Liberals.
Citizen Services.
I'll tell you that.
Mr. Speaker, do you remember when the Conservatives campaigned on shutting down veterans' offices? Yep. Or do you remember when they promised to increase the retirement age to 67? Well, of course you don't, because Conservatives never actually say what they're actually going to do. It's why they speak in slogans. They hope no one would notice that they shut down veterans' offices in Corner Brook, Sydney, Charlottetown, Thunder Bay, Windsor, Saskatoon, Brandon, Kelowna, and Prince George. Mr. Speaker, our government reopened all those offices, and we opened a new office in Surrey, because when we say that we support veterans, unlike Conservatives, we actually mean it.
Mary Ng standing up. Bro, sit down.
The honourable member from Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, Windsor is being abused and taken for granted by the Liberals yet again. It's a sad state that the city must sue the federal government to recoup the cost of the Ambassador Bridge blockade. While the Conservatives supported this illegal activity that hurt the economy and public safety, the Liberals are making Windsor taxpayers foot the bill. This means less money for roads, parks, housing, and emergency services. Less services for Windsor because of Liberal failures. Instead of forcing Windsor to fight in court, will this government repay the city and finally take responsibility for federal border costs as they should?
The Honourable Minister for Public Security.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank our colleague from Windsor for that important question. He's right. At a time when the Conservatives were supporting the illegal acts of the convoy, the City of Windsor and the province of Ontario.
The convoy was deemed not
to bring this horrible
illegal. It was deemed legal.
Conclusion. I was happy some months ago to have an opportunity to talk to the Mayor of Windsor. My colleagues on this side of the House have also been talking to me about what we can do to support the City of Windsor. And Mr. Speaker, we're always open to working with the City of Windsor. They've been a valuable partner to our government.
The honourable member from Courtenay, Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, INEO Employment in Port Alberni provides vital support to help people trying to find jobs. They offer necessary training and capacity building for employment readiness. They can do this because of the BC Community and Employer Partnerships Program, but they've recently lost support due to federal funding cuts. Funding cuts that are happening because the Liberal slashed BC's funding by $74 million. They're leaving people out to dry. But while they do everything they can to continue to prop up rich CEOs, will the Liberals immediately restore BC's federal funding to make sure that these critical programs keep running?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
I'm happy to report to this House that the Government of Canada transfers $2.8 billion every year to train almost 1 million workers in partnerships that we have with British Columbia, provinces and territories across the country. If that member and other members in this House want to make sure that we have a fully functioning workforce, let's get the provinces to do their part when it comes to recognizing foreign credentials. We have thousands of people in this country who need to make sure that the credentials are recognized here. We need the provinces to do their part and make sure that people don't have survival jobs in this country, but they have dignified jobs from coast to coast to coast.
It being 3:19, the House will now proceed to the taking
folks.
of the deferred recorded division.
That's where we're going to end the stream. We're not going to look at who's in the gallery. That was a pretty good one. It was definitely top heavy. Started off really, really strong, and then it got boring pretty fast, but we got through it nonetheless. And I'm still so surprised and shocked that Mary Ng is not only able to sit in Parliament, but able to talk after being ousted by independent MP Kevin Vaughn as a traitor and ties to foreign interference with China. I don't know how this makes any sense. This is insanity at the highest level. Two things, right? Either it's not that big of a deal, or it is a big deal and they just don't care about it. I'm going with it's a pretty big deal and they just don't care about it. But thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm going to read off some of the chats here. Let's take a look. One moment. All right, here. So you've got Kevin Meg's dad with the membership. I appreciate that, sir. Thank you so much. Elfrin, Cliff-hanging Canuck with the 5 saying liberals have something to hide. I bet the majority of those 11 are liberals who are trying to save their butts. Gross, no accountability, Mary Ing. Oh, yeah, man. I don't understand how it makes any sense. Doesn't make any sense to me at all. Jim Smith says, keep up the good work, Jasper. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Nexera with the 10 saying Trudeau smells, Karina smells, Christia smells. Hashtag Trump 2024. Make both America and Canada great again. Yes, sir. I appreciate that. So Canuckin crazy with the 5 saying, not that I'm pro Trudeau, but one has to wonder, why doesn't Pierre get that security clearance? I mean, really. So that's a good question. In case you just aren't aware, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt there. So when Pierre, when whoever has access with that security clearance to see these documents, they're prevented. It's like an NDA for life. If you talk about what you've seen to anyone in private, in public especially, and you're caught, you go to jail for life. It's an act of treason. So Pierre Poilievre would not be able to talk about it the way he's openly talking about it and speculating right now. He wouldn't be able to speculate even if he throws off false information. He's already seen the information. And so any mention about anything is an act of treason, which is why whenever Jagmeet talks about it, he says, you know, I'm not going to answer that question, but you know, according to the public briefing that everyone has access to, yada, 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 yada. And Jagmeet's actions since seeing the briefing with the security clearance has been nothing. He hasn't done a single thing. So Pierre Poilievre effectively wouldn't be able to talk about anything. He also wouldn't actually be able to do anything. But they want him to stop talking about it, which is why they want him to get the security clearance. This isn't like a dungy, you know, weird YouTube take. This is like even the previous leader of the NDP and almost Prime Minister once upon a time, Tom Mulcair, who appears on CTV a lot, has literally said this, that he does not think Pierre should get the security clearance. Andrew Lepence with the 2 saying Quebecers and Canadians, he is a separatist. I'm assuming you were talking about the Bloc. Matthew Galligan with the 2 saying ship Trudeau to his father's land in Cuba. Yeah, that was weird that Stephanie Kusi was like super pro Cuba. I don't know. That's not really what conservatives are that worried about. It's more Canada and Canadian things. Programmers with the 5 saying Trudeau stands with Hamas and Khalistan. Pierre stands with the Jews and Hindus. I don't know if it's that black and white. I think that Pierre's done like a good amount of you know, photo ops and speeches and been pretty involved with the Sikh community. But I get what you're trying to say. I just don't think it's like that divisive. Konisma with the 2 saying, hope we have a Christmas present of an election. I mean, that would be dope. That would be awesome. Get it over with. We can all enjoy our holidays. We can all just be a little bit more at peace. That would be phenomenal. And to end things off here, Clayton LeBlanc with the 5 saying, you're the best, Jasper. Thanks for all you do, my friend. Thank you, Clayton. I appreciate that, sir. All right, guys, this is where we're going to end it. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate everybody, you know, smashing the like button and, you know, being subscribed to the channel and more importantly, just being involved with the community and the live chat. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow is Caucus Leader Day. So there will be, right, because today's Tuesday. Yeah, there'll be a lot of Pierre and Trudeau tomorrow. So see you guys same time tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. Head over to the main channel, MSB, and stay tuned for some videos. And yeah, the election is going to be huge. So make sure everyone's glued to your phones and devices tonight because you never know what's going to happen. Peace, love, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.